Well, we got a whole lot of comics coming out this week, so let's see which ones made the pull list. Welcome back to Comics Are Dope. I'm BJ Kicks, and this is the pull list. It's my weekly series where I take a look at all the books coming out. I'll tell you what's on my pull list. We'll talk about what's hitting the chopping block, and we'll even talk about some new number ones and new trade paperback collections that you should definitely be checking out for this week of new comics, Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. Man, this year is already getting off to a hot start. We're 2 weeks in. It's crazy. We're breaking this down into segments. And if you're new around here, it's okay. I'm going to explain them as we go. And we're going to start with the top of the pile. The top of the pile are the books that I am most excited about grabbing. These are the ones that are waiting for me at my LCS Fight or Flight Comics in Raleigh. And when I grab them, I'm reading them. Like, these are the types of books that I would want to read like in the parking lot of my LCS. That's how excited I am to get to them. So let's go ahead and get to the top of the pile, starting with Milestone Universe, The Shadow Cabinet, issue number 3. Milestone Universe, The Shadow Cabinet. This one is written by Joe Illidge with art. I believe in issue 3, Dennis Cowan is joining the art team along with Daryl Banks and Adagun Ilhan. This series has been dope so far. So basically, we've got Rocket, who is moving on, let's say maybe 6 months past the events of Icon versus Hardware. And, her experiment trying to bring an alien into Dakota to make things better isn't quite going the way she expected. And so she's in a situation where she's got to step up even more. And she's been invited to join this sort of cast of superheroes or metahumans to try to make the world a better place. And she's not quite sure whose side she wants to be on. Now, in the last issue, she went and tried to recruit Static. And Static, we find, is not the same Static that we left in Shadows of Dakota. Static being all bright and hopeful and just fun and wisecracking. That Static ain't really here right now. And that's very interesting. Static is almost acting as though he's like a member of the Blood Syndicate, where it's like, I am staying on my block. I am protecting home. And I don't care what you got going on the other ends of the earth. I'm right here, 10 toes down. And I'm like, yo, that's crazy. It's interesting because it's like this Static reminds me a little bit of the Static from Rebirth of the Cool, when he was kind of like in retirement for a little while and had to be recruited back into a certain mission. So it's really interesting seeing Static this way. And there are also really good tones of Static. Like in Static Season 1, we got like a very emotions forward version of Static, and we get that back in this issue. I think all in all, issue 2 was a banger. I'm excited for issue 3. Only 2 more issues left of this series, but they are 40-page issues, so I'm excited about that. I'm going to be sad when this goes, but hopefully it's leading to something epic, and we're getting more from the Milestone Universe. Shadow Cabinet issue number 3 is out this week. Cover price is $4.99. I'm getting cover A. I'm also getting cover B because I get every Milestone cover, and hey, I make no apologies about it. Now let's keep on with the next book at the top of the pile. By the way, this top of the pile is very black, and I'm excited. We're like 2 weeks ahead of schedule. This is great. Anyway, Storm, issue number 4 is also out this week. Storm, written by Murewa Ayodele with art. Lucas Wernick is on the art for Storm. This is another series that's been dope. A Black woman-led series. Storm has been going through some issues. Let's just say it's almost like the premise kind of reminds you of like something like an all-star Superman. Like, this is Storm trying to figure out this illness while also having to be Storm. And we set Storm up as like the most loved mutant in all of Marvel. And then we kind of take her down a couple notches because of just recent events and things that she's got to kind of lead mutant kind through and be this sort of mutant ambassador to the world through. Through 3 issues, it's been really interesting watching her try to kind of deal with the weight of this diagnosis that's on her and all the emotions that come out of that, with also trying to keep a pretty face on for mutant kind and for mankind, all, the same. So really interesting stuff. I actually interviewed the writer Murewa Ayodele last week. You'll hear that interview on Thursday. Just a heads up, I did spoil one bit of issue 3 in that interview. So check out the interview Thursday after you read issue 4 on Wednesday. Cover price on it is $3.99. I'm getting cover A. Next book at the top of the pile, my favorite books coming out this week. This is Miles Morales, Spider-Man, issue number 29. It's written by Cody Ziegler. This arc has art by Danielle Dinaculo. So interesting stuff going on. Basically, Miles had to travel to Wakanda with T'Challa to try to get Bast to basically cure him of this vampirism. And we've seen Miles versus Bast and Anansi. There's been some interesting stuff. I'm actually still one issue behind. I just read issue 27 last week. I got to grab issue 28 and also read issue 29 out this week. Cover price on it is $3.99. I'm grabbing cover A. And last book at the top of the pile this week. I told you this is a super black top of the pile, and I'm hype about it. But we got Black Lightning, issue number 3. Black Lightning, written by Brandon Thomas, with art by Fico Ocio from DC Comics. This book is dope. Now, it almost landed out of the top of the pile. It almost ended up in the Fledgling 4. We'll talk about that section later. But there's aspects of this that I really, really like, and then aspects that I'm kind of like, yeah. So let's start with what I really like about this book. So this Black Lightning, basically following Absolute Power. This feels like it most directly follows up Absolute Power, because when Absolute Power ends, what we learn is that, thanks to Amanda Waller, a lot of people lost their powers. And then, when the heroes undid everything didn't really get undone correctly. So people got their powers back. Some people got powers that never had powers before. Other people didn't get their powers back, or they lost control of them somehow. And that's where we land with Jefferson Pierce and his family. So his daughter, Anissa, lost control of her powers. She can't quite keep things under control. And it's almost like her anger makes it even worse. So she's been in therapy, just kind of trying to unpack her feelings about being a metahuman, being a superhero, post Absolute Power. But straight up, she's got daddy issues. And it's interesting to see. By the way, they're living in a world where metahumans are like hated and feared. And I think that's the part that I'm kind of like, about. Like, there's this whole campaign. There are politicians like, yo, we can't let these metahumans come in and run amok. Like, the only one that's worth believing in is Superman. Everybody else is like just a smiling face trying to be a trickster. And I just feel like, I don't know, I'm already reading X-Men, and like DC doesn't need to have like the X-Men mutant analogy. So that's why I'm kind of on the fence about it. But there's a moment where there's like a metahuman, kind of coming into his powers, being kind of afraid and all that, not knowing what to think of himself. He sees a news broadcast, and his mom has to kind of come in and talk some sense into him. Like, yo, remember Black Lightning? Remember that girl that just saved you last week? Like, stop listening to this nonsense on TV. I just really liked that speech that she gave him, and that kind of softened me toward this whole hated and feared arc in the DC universe. All in all, really well done stuff. Brandon Thomas has got to come on the show soon. That's on me. I think I got to respond to an email. Black Lightning, issue 3 has got a cover price of $3.99. I'm grabbing cover A. And that's it. Those were the books at the top of the pile. The books that I'm most excited about grabbing at the comic shop this week. Now, let's talk about some new series debuts and jumping in points that are on the radar. Now, our On the Radar segment is brought to you by Global Comics. They are my favorite app for reading independent titles, and they also just added DC Comics to the fold. So there's a lot of DC collected editions that you can grab in Global Comics. They have a web reader. You can read them right there on your phone, or my favorite way to interact with Global Comics is through their iPad app. I'm all about reading digital comics on the iPad. But you can go ahead, jump in the app. I've actually got a code. So if you use the code GCXBook BJ Kicks. You'll get 30% off an annual gold pass, and that unlocks everything that was previously behind a paywall, and you get it for a whole year. So check that out, and shout out to Global Comics for sponsoring the pull list. Now, let's get into these books that are on the radar. On the radar's new series debuts, story arcs, or jumping in points that I think you should be looking out for. And I don't think there is a more hyped number one this year or this week than Ultimate Wolverine, issue number 1 from Marvel Comics. This one is written by Chris Condon with art by Alessandro Cappuccio. Now, if you read the Ultimate Universe 1 year in special, we got a little bit of a teaser as to what Ultimate Wolverine is. And it's kind of a cross between Wolverine and like the Winter Soldier. That seems very interesting. But what's really got me hype is Alessandro Cappuccio on art. You know him from Jed McKay's Moon Knight. That Moon Knight by Jed McKay omnibus has beautiful art by Cappuccio all throughout. And he actually left Moon Knight to start drawing this Wolverine book. And so if you were missing that beautiful brushstroke work and just the line art, it's going to be in this Ultimate Wolverine book. And that is mostly why I'm excited about it. Plus the fact that, plus Wolverine's my favorite mutant besides Storm. So I'm down. Cover price on it is $5.99 though. I'm grabbing cover A. Next up, Green Lantern. Next up is Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum, issue number 1. Now, I'm kind of behind on the whole Jeremy Adams Green Lantern saga. I feel like I've only read one issue in the All-In era, so that puts me, 3 months behind? And we had the Civil War special. I think that's the last time I was really tapped in to Green Lantern. I know they're going to be splitting off into, the regular Green Lantern title and the Green Lantern Corps title with Mo Hampton. I don't know where this fractured spectrum thing fits in. I don't know if it's a one shot or what. I do know that I really like that cover by Steven Segovia, the B cover. So I'm probably going to grab that one. $3.99 is a cover price on it. Next up, a brand new number 1 from Image Comics. This is Finders Keepers, issue number 1. It's written by Vita Ayala, which has me kind of like my ears perked up on it. But let's listen to this. This is part of the Horizon experiment, by the way. Which is kind of spearheaded by Pornsak Pichashot. And his whole thing is like, with the Horizon experiment, I want you guys to create new takes on sort of classic genres and tropes and stuff, but write them in a way that kind of platforms underrepresented communities in a way that whatever their sort of, minority or whatever it is, whether it's their race, ethnicity, location of origin, I don't know, whatever that is, write it in a way that if you changed that feature on them, it would break the story. And so this one is like an Indiana Jones meets Robin Hood story of like I want to say a Puerto Rican who is basically like Lara Croft Tomb Raider type thing. And she is breaking into museums and taking these artifacts and then returning them to the indigenous cultures that they came from. And so that just sounds super interesting. I don't know if these are like one-shots or miniseries. I haven't checked out any of the Horizon Experiment titles yet, but this is one that's definitely going to be on my radar. And since it's Image Comics, we'll be able to load it into Global Comics here pretty soon. So that'll be dope. $3.99 is a cover price on that one, and that's cover A. And the last one from Dark Horse Comics. This is Behemoth, issue number 1. Behemoth is like, just sounds like a fun, like sort of, I don't know, horror movie or thriller movie type trope, but this, a monster swallows a bus, like kind of like that monster from which Star Wars movie is it? The Sarlacc pit, whatever. A monster swallows a bus. And so you got this passenger or this bus full of passengers trying to deal with the fact that they've been swallowed by a monster. But apparently this monster has swallowed other creatures, people, beings before. And so whatever else is in the pit of this monster, they're going to have to fight against while being like on this sort of super thriller surviving adventure. And that just sounds like a fun afternoon spent reading a comic. So I can't wait till that hits Global Comics. $3.99 is a cover price on that one. And those were all the new number 1 series debuts, jumping in points that are on my radar for the week of January 15th, 2025. Now, let's get to the next segment, the Fledgling 4. These are 4 books that are on my pull list, but they just don't quite make it to the top of the pile. Usually it's because I fell behind for one reason or another, but sometimes maybe the story is just not strong enough. So let's jump into the Fledgling 4 with a brand new jumping in point. This is Action Comics issue 1082. This one's going to be written by John Ridley. It's the first issue in a 3-issue story arc. Yes, the Superman Superstars program is back. So we got John Ridley. Now, the last thing I read from John Ridley was GCPD, The Blue Wall at DC. And I actually really liked that. But that came after Black Panther by John Ridley, which I did not like. Like, I actively disliked. And that came after I Am Batman, which I was up and down on, but ultimately ended up disliking. So I don't know. John Ridley's very up and down for me. The other thing that he's written that I loved was the other history of the DC universe. The fact that he's writing mainline Superman and not like Val Zod or President Superman or, insert Black Superman here has me feeling like, okay, what stories is he going to tackle? What kind of angle is this story going to take? And I'm curious to see how it is. I think because it's not going to be starring a Black guy or person, like I can have like a view of it that's a little bit less critical. And I can kind of just enjoy it for what it is, for whatever that's worth. So I'm looking at this with very, cautious eyes. I'm cautiously optimistic. It's not like John Ridley can't write a comic. He just hasn't treated my favorite characters very well. So Action Comics 1082 is in the Fledgling 4, $4.99. It may earn a spot at the top of the pile, or it might jump off of the pull list altogether. Next up is Feral, issue number 9. Feral written by Tony Fleece with art by Trish Forstner and Tone Rodriguez. This is only in the Fledgling 4 because I'm behind. And that's actually the same story as every other book in the Fledgling 4 besides Action Comics. But Feral number 9, I really like it. It's an ongoing sort of zombie book. This is like, The Walking Dead meets Oliver and Company. And I like it. I like it for that reason. But it's easy to kind of jump in and out of because it's just I don't know. You're not going to find out what's ailing Batman in that book or whatever. So Feral issue number 9 is in the Fledgling 4 this week. $3.99 is the cover price on it. I'm grabbing cover A. Next up, from Daniel Warren Johnson and Riley Rossmo, this is The Moon is Following Us, issue number 5. And yeah, same story. I moved a few weeks ago, and basically everything from October to right now, I'm like struggling with. Like I gotta just take a day and just read a bunch of comics. I'm gonna do it, but it's gonna take some time. So Moon is Following Us is in the top of that pile, the catch-up pile is what we'll call that. I always grab the cover Bs on this by Daniel Warren Johnson since Riley Rossmo handles so much of the interiors. So that's what I'm going to do this time around for a cover price of $3.99. And the last book on the Fledgling 4 this week is Space Ghost, issue number 9. Space Ghost, written by David Pepose, art by Jonathan Lau, was one of my favorite books of 2024. But I basically stopped reading it after the first story arc wrapped up. Like I really got to go get caught up and see what the second story arc has brought us. I expect that I'm going to be, I wouldn't even say surprised. I would say pleasantly surprised, but it's not going to be a surprise when I pick up this book and it's actually really good. I just have not had time to dive in. And that is why we're cutting back on the books on the pull list this year, because I want to be able to read everything every week. Anyway, Space Ghost number 9 is still on my pull list. Cover price is $4.99. And I'm not grabbing cover A because I just don't like the 3D, like sort of video game looking covers. I don't know which cover I'm going to grab because I haven't looked at them yet, but it's on the screen now. Actually, it's not there. It's there. I switched up the sides. It's somewhere. Anyway, Space Ghost number 9 is the book rounding out the Fledgling 4 this week. And now we can get to the newest segment of the pull list, and it's called Trade Waiting. Now, because I'm cutting back on my single issues in 2025, I got to start picking up trades. So the trade waiting section is for series that either recently wrapped or are going to trade paperback for the first time. These aren't going to be like thick, epic collections or compendiums or anything like that. These are like basically series that if you were trade waiting, this is your first chance at these stories since they were in singles. And we're going to start things off with G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, Volume 2. This is the Larry Hama penned series. I believe Philip Tan is on the art. When I opened up Volume 1, I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, snap. I don't know why I thought Larry Hama was drawing that series, but it is a very modern looking series. It's kind of interesting that it's happening. It's basically, this started at Skybound with issue 301. It's continuing from like the long Larry Hama traditional Real American Hero stuff from Marvel. Now it's with Skybound, and the quality of the paper is really good. The art looks really good. The colors look really good. I'm not a big G.I. Joe fan, but it's just a fun thing to have in the collection. So Volume 2 is out this week. Cover price on it is a little bit higher than Volume 1 was at $14.99. Next up, Venom, Separation Anxiety. This is one of those like newer, or we did the same thing last week. We had like a classic creator revisiting a story during their classic continuity. So this is a Venom story set back in the early days of Venom and Eddie Brock trying to get, revenge on Spider-Man, threatening to eat people's brains and stuff like that. I'll talk more about it tomorrow, actually, because I'm doing a whole breakdown of Marvel trade paperbacks. But this collects Venom Separation Anxiety issues 1 through 5. It's called The King in Purple is the name of that story. Art in that is really, really good as well. It's written by David Michelini, art by Gerardo Sandoval, if I remember correctly. $17.99 is cover price on that one. Next up, from DC Comics, this is Kneel Before Zod. Kneel Before Zod is actually written by Joe Casey with art. I didn't write down the artist. Kneel Before Zod is something that was kind of interesting to me. I like Superman, but I've only recently developed an appreciation for Superman. So I didn't feel like I wanted to grab a miniseries starring a Superman villain that I hadn't read about in any other context. So trade waiting it is. That one's got a cover price of $19.99. Looks cool though. Rockin' Robbie Billups from Pop Culture Philosophers spoke really highly about that series the whole time. So that'll be a cool one. And for all you Top Cow fans, Witchblade Volume 1 is out this week. This is a brand new Witchblade series written by Marguerite Bennett. And Image Comics always does their trade paperbacks, the Volume 1s for $9.99. And it's like, for that price, why not try out this series? I believe this has 6 issues plus a half issue. And they say there's a 3-page sequence that's exclusive to the trade paperback. Even the folks that grab the floppies every month didn't get a chance at. So all that for $9.99 if you're a Witchblade fan seems like a no-brainer to me. And that's it. That is all of the books on the radar for trade waiting this week of New Comics, January 15th, 2025. And that's going to do it for the pull list. Now, let me know, what books are at the top of your reading pile this week? I know there's a lot coming out. I know there's a lot going on. Is your pull list as black as mine this week? If so, hey, let's have a party. I like it. Hey, we can hang out. Anyway, you're invited to the cookout. That's a Sam Wilson joke. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. I'm talking too much. It's too late at night. I'll have more books to talk about for you tomorrow and all throughout the week. Make sure you stay tuned for Comics Are Dope, the podcast with Urewa Ayodele. That's coming out on Thursday. And I'll see you guys in another video real soon. Until then, stay safe, stay awesome, and read something dope today.